Hello dear viewers, today I am going to discuss with you 17th century England. In this video, I'll be discussing with you the socio-political scenario of England, the literature of 17th century, the contemporary writers and poets. Okay, dear viewers, 17th century England was a period of continuous or constant socio-political turmoil, religious turmoil, particularly between the Catholics and the Protestants, and also between the parliamentarians and the royalists. To begin with, 1600 means right from 1600 to 1649, when there was end of the monarchy in England, or there was the end of English monarchy and the beginning of democracy or the rule of the people in England. It witnessed so many battles between two groups, particularly the Catholics and Protestants, and between the parliamentarians and the royalists. Okay, and the execution of Charles I. Okay, so to begin with, 1600. Okay, the East India Company was founded in 1600. Okay, and in 1601, the poor law is passed. People are made to pay extra taxes for this. Means in 1601, after the passing of East India Company, after the foundation of East India Company, which was a way to colonize India. Now 1601, the English Parliament passes a bill, and that bill is aimed at supporting the poor people. Okay, so as a result, extra taxes, okay, were there for the people, and the people were ultimately had to pay for the poor. Okay, so this is known as the poor law is passed, and people are made to pay extra taxes to support the poor. Okay, in 1603, in March, in the month of March, Queen Elizabeth dies. Okay, so this is means 1603 in March, when Queen Elizabeth dies. So this shows, I mean, this is the end of Tudor dynasty, Tudor dynasty, and or dynasty, and the beginning of uh, Stuart dynasty. Okay, James I becomes King of England. So this is the end of this, marks the year 1603 marks the end of Tudor dynasty and the beginning of Stuart dynasty or dynasty. King, so James I becomes the King of England. Okay, then in 1605, the gunpowder, actually James I was a Protestant, so the Catholics didn't want James I to continue as the King of England. Okay, so the Catholics were constantly conspiring against James I. Okay, and so there was this gunpowder plot was there. So this gunpowder plot was there. It was an attempt by the Catholic, by the Catholics. The conspirators were the Catholics. They wanted to kill James I. James I was a Protestant. Okay, so this is known as the gunpowder plot. In so 1605, this is an important event. Okay, which is known as the conspiracy or the attempt to murder, to assassinate the king, the then King of England, James I, is known as the gunpowder plot. Okay, and Guy Fawkes was one of the conspirators. Okay, so a Catholic conspiracy it was to blow up Parliament. Okay, so this is discovered by the authorities. So this was a significant event. There was restlessness in the Catholics against James I. 1607, it was the beginning of colonization. So Jamestown, the first successful British colony in North America, was founded in 1606. Sorry, 7. In 1607, Jamestown, which was the first successful British colony that was founded in America. Okay, so colonization, there was East India Company, and then in North America, uh, uh, that town is coming up. So these are the steps of colonizing, okay, or colonization. In 1611, King James, as I have mentioned in short, that there has been continuous or constant tussle between the Catholics and the Protestants. And let me remind you, dear viewers, that James I, the King of England, was a Protestant himself. Okay, and there was an attempt on his life as well. So, after this conspiracy, or after this uh, the gunpowder plot, 1605, which was an attempt on the life of King James I of England, uh, James I tried to uh, reform English society. Okay, or he, as a king, he wanted to end the conflict between the Catholics and the Protestants by writing a common Bible for all the people, so that this brings about reformation, and only the good things are mentioned there. Okay, or the points of conflicts can be removed. Okay, so in order to do that, in order to end enmity between the Catholics and the Protestants, uh, the King James Bible is published. Okay, so as I mentioned, that the King James Bible is published. So this, in this Bible, with this Bible, he tried to end the conflict, or he tried to end the enmity between the Catholics and the Protestant by writing only the constructive points of the Bible, right? Okay, so it's 1625. Okay, 1625, James I dies. Okay, and Charles I becomes King of England. Okay, in 1625, James I dies and Charles I becomes King of England. In 1628, William Harvey, actually, Jacobean era in detail. Dear viewers, Jacobean is based on James 1, or I should say James. Now you will wonder, how come Jacobean be based on James? Let me tell you, dear viewers, that the word James is derived from Jacob, Jacob, Jacob in Hebrew, which is mentioned in Bible, and in Arabic it is Yaqub. And let me add one more thing, that other than English, majority of uh, European languages use J as ya. Okay, so Yaqub, Jacob, or okay, so from Jacob, James is derived, and that's why from Jacob the era is known as Jacobean. So it dates back to Hebrew era or Bible era. So after the death of Elizabeth I in 1603, it was the end of Tudor dynasty, because Elizabeth I was the last ruler to rule England from Tudor dynasty, and James I becoming the king of unified England, that is England and Scotland. It was the beginning of Stuart ruler, or Stuart dynasty, and this is popularly known as Jacobean Era. So, Jacobean Era begins in the year 1603 and ends in 1625 after the death of King James I. Okay, dear viewers, as I have mentioned in the beginning, that James I was a Protestant, so the Catholics were not comfortable with his ideas of ruling. Okay, as a result, there were, and also right from 1603, with the transfer of power after the death of Queen Elizabeth I, there it was a period of for about 50 years, not about just 23 years, but from right from 1603 to 1649, it was a period of conflicts between, particularly between the Catholics and the Protestants on the one hand, on the other hand between the parliamentarians and the royalists. Okay, so he was a Protestant, so there were several conspiracies against him, and attempts were made to assassinate James I by the Catholics. Okay, and in this context, the conspiracy of 1605, which is also known as the gunpowder plot, okay, of those Catholic conspirators, Guy Fawkes is significantly mentioned in history. And in November, one day, or 15th November, something like that, his day is celebrated when the effigies of Guy Fawkes is burnt in England. Actually, these people were going to blow up the parliament itself, killing also the parliamentarians and the king itself, right now. So, in order to bring about changes, or in order to lessen or decrease or end the enmity between these two groups, the Catholics and the Protestants, King James I got a new version of Bible written, okay, which was known as James Bible, or it was an authorized Bible, means in England only this version of Bible will be permitted, so that there is no enmity. It was with good intention, okay, right? Now, this I have already mentioned, it was marked by the end of the Elizabethan era, and king some important things about this: the king was a Protestant, and he was highly educated person. Attempts were made on his life, and the 1605 gunpowder plot I have already mentioned. Okay, James Bible I have already mentioned. So apart from these socio-religious political turmoil, this 16th century England also witnessed some of the important writers writing their work, like John Donne writing Pseudo Martyr, and Ben Jonson becoming the that uh, poet laureate in the year 1616. Okay, and then new colony was named there in America, that James town. Okay, so these were the important events, and then Francis Bacon uh, becoming the rising star. Okay, and okay, so these were the prominent writers of those days. Okay, in 1623 the first folio of Shakespeare was published. Okay, then in 1625, on March 27, James I dies. Okay, and after the death of James I, his son Charles I inherits the throne. So this is the end in 1625, after the death of James I. uh, it was the end of the Jacobean era, which began in 1603 after the death of Elizabeth I. So, Elizabethan era was followed by Jacobean era with the with James I becoming the king of England. For about more than 2 decades, he remained the king. And in 1625, it was the end of Jacobean era after the death of James I as the king. Okay, and now after 1625, we will discuss the Caroline era, which began with with Charles I, the son of James I, becoming the king of England. Okay, so in the next video, we'll be discussing the Caroline era. Now we'll discuss how Charles is there, King Charles is there, and how it will be known as Caroline era, as it is James I. James it is there, and how it is known as Jacobean era. So it dates back to the Hebrew language, right? A biblical name. The same way, we will also discuss how that the era of Charles I is popularly known as the Caroline era. What's the relation between Charles and then Caroline? Two different words. Okay, so that's all for this video. Thank you very much. God bless you all.